All right, we are back at the Man Cave. Got a video from MSNBC. It's about loneliness and how it's affecting Americans. Or they're talking about all Americans. And if it's the media, whether it's MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News, you know it's definitely not going to be fake news. So let's get to it, shall we?
This week on Morning Mika, the kids, and actually adults too, are not okay.
Percy?
Yeah?
Wait, your name's Percy?
Yeah?
Percy? Sorry, continue. Percy? Doesn't anyone anymore?
That was Jennifer Lawrence in a scene from No Hard Feelings, finding a bunch of teens and 20-somethings glued to their phones at a house party. It underscores a troubling reality right now. A growing number of younger Americans aren't dating. They're not hanging out. And no, they're not even hooking up. For so many women who want to date men, dating has become a total nightmare. And there are a number of reasons why. I'm Mika Brzezinski here with Simone Sanders Townsend, Huma Abedin, and Jen Psaki. I
don't care what anybody said. Hey, Ginger. Anyway. Yeah, we already knew this was not going to be about everyone being affected. It's about to be about the women. We already knew this. Continue, ladies. Post-wall, ladies. And
I have heard from a lot of young women who want to date young men that there are none. There are no guys. They're trying to connect. They often use dating apps, but find a total lack of connection. And it seems that the men they are meeting don't really share the same priorities if they show up. Women, especially career-driven women, say the men they're meeting are more interested in sex and not looking for a deeper connection, and that it's becoming more and more of a problem. So what's changing? Because not that long ago, people used to meet each other through work, let's be honest, or through friends, maybe at a bar or in a college campus, and it gave people a chance to actually learn about each other, to break through the filters, to demonstrate kindness and show commitment and values, to actually earn affection. But today, so many people are living life through a screen. They're not going out nearly as much, not to church, not to movies, or even to the office. Opportunities to fall in love are falling by the wayside, meaning people are making decisions by swiping left on their smartphones.
what did you think was going to happen? First, let's get started with anything outside of work, outside the house. Women, society have made it pretty much messed up for a man to approach a woman, to go out and get her attention, to talk to her, find out what's going on, what she does for a living, and all this stuff. We shame men for going out there. Unless you look like a certain caliber of men, you're a top 10 or 5% of men, which would be what every woman is going after. So you want those men to go after you, but then you shame the other men that would even say hi to you. So there goes that. You can't even go to the gym because every woman wants to shame you there. You definitely will not do it at work, because what happens? Women will try to get you to lose your job, not because you actually did anything, because they want to follow a trend and not really caring what happens to you in the end if you get in trouble and get fired just for saying hello or actually approaching someone. So men are just not happy, and they're terrified to go and meet you in public. And some men just don't have the confidence to do what is necessary to say what the woman wants to hear, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But the fact is that most women don't see the majority of men who they see as average at their level, even though those women are usually average. Dating back in the 90s and so 2000s especially were like the best time to date, because dating apps made it a lot more fun to date. You took time to talk to people. You weren't thinking about, was this woman seeing someone else or talking to multiple people? We all were. But you took the time to actually write the person back. Now, you got people in their 40s and 50s who kind of act as if they're 20s and wait all day long to talk to the guy that they want to talk to, and then come back later when the guy gives up. Oh, I'm sorry that my grandmother died, or I was sick with mono, or whatever the hell's going on. And then you're wondering why these guys won't come back to you, because you won't even take the dating scene seriously. Now it's even worse. Because even in the 90s, you met people out in public. You go out places, you see them, you talk to them, you engage with them. And then things would happen. Nowadays, it's swipe, 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 swipe. And these women are not taking the time to learn anything about these guys. They're just looking for the looks. When the first thing that women always say, I'm more than just looks, but all you do is swipe on the looks. So if there's some guy who doesn't have the proper haircut, or his shoes are not the right way, or he blinks too much, or he coughs too much, or he has his color shade of eyes is off, or his skin complexion is not what you want it to be, you swipe whatever direction is when you deny what you want. And that's one of the biggest problems. But of course, we're not going to talk about that. It's the men's fault.
Rather than truly learning to connect, the highs, the lows, the disappointments, all of that stuff. It's all part of the process. And it's affecting mental health too. According to a recent study of people over the age of 18, those who used swipe-based dating apps experienced significantly higher rates of psychological distress, anxiety, and depression. Another study showed a link between using dating apps and experiencing loneliness, dissatisfaction with life, and this is a big one, a feeling of exclusion from the world, feeling so left out. And when women do go to coffee shops, what we're hearing is that they try, or to a club or the grocery store or anything where they get out and interact with people, they say the men that they want to meet just don't share their ideals. It's partly because so many young men are spending their lives also logged in, overly influenced by a flood of whatever you can find online, porn, video games, toxic masculinity. Who needs the real thing when you can get something better, and I put that in quotes, by scrolling? Here's what Scott...
I love when these platforms try to make it seem like the problem is very simple. It is simple, but they make it so complicated. They want to sit here and once again, they can't wait to say man fault. Once you hear someone use the terms toxic masculinity, you already know where this is going. It's just the same nonsense over and over again. Well, they're finding it hard to do it, but you ignore, like, you know that they know what TikTok is. They know what the dating apps are. They know what women are going after. So either they don't want to look at the stats and results as why these women are not getting the results they want because they're only shooting for the small percentage of men, or they're just blindly pretending it doesn't exist so they have a narrative. Like I said, this is about women's feelings. Depression, this has been going on when men have been dealing with depression, being lonely for a long period of time, but we're only caring about it because now women are getting it because men don't want to deal with their nonsense. You don't want to deal with the nonsense. That's why men are turned away. They don't want to deal with your nonsense. Who wants to go knowing, and I hate to say this, but go knowing they're going to be rejected? It sucks. But now it's a problem because men are rejecting women and don't want to talk to them. Oh, let's blame the men. They're just watching P-Hub. They're too busy in their video games. They're this and that. I'm not saying that P-Hub isn't the problem. But when you're not getting with women and you're trying everything you want, sometimes resorting to that is the only way to go. I'm sorry to say, but it is what it is. If these women cannot give these men what they want, or they don't want, or these women don't want them, of course they're going to go elsewhere. When you insult them, of course they're going to go elsewhere. When you demonize them or threaten them, of course they're going to go elsewhere. We just keep pretending that the problem is just men's fault, and if they would just change, things would go better. I'm glad men are turning away, because you know what? I'm sick and tired of women thinking that it's always the men's fault as long as someone tells you it's the man's fault.
Galloway, professor of marketing at NYU, told us on Morning Joe about some of the reasons why men are becoming like this.
I think you have the most talented, well-resourced people in the world and companies trying to convince a young man that he can have a reasonable facsimile of life in his basement behind a screen. You don't need friends. Go on Reddit or Discord. You don't need to get a job. Go on Robinhood or Coinbase and trade crypto and stocks. You don't need to go through the rejection and the expense and the humiliation and working out and having a plan and humor and showering to get a romantic relationship. You have YouPorn. So we have an entire generation, especially of young men, who are out home, sequestering from society and missing out on what it means. You know, there's a reason romantic comedies are 2 hours and not 15 minutes. True victory in life is hard. Going out, meeting someone, finding mentors, finding mates, that stuff is hard, but that's what real victory in real life is like. And because a lot of men feel rejected on dating apps, the number of jobs that are accessible to them has gone down. You have essentially a group of men who are saying, I want a low-risk entry into life, and they go down a rabbit hole. When they don't have social connections, and they don't get out, and they don't have the prospect of a romantic relationship, they're more prone to conspiracy theory, they're more prone to misogynistic content, they're less likely to believe in climate change, and some become really bad citizens. We are producing too many of the most dangerous person in the world, and that is a young, broke, and lonely young man.
Wow. As Professor Galloway pointed out, 1 in 3 relationships used to begin at work. Now young people are not going into the office as often. And if you are a young man at work, are you more or less inclined to express some sort of romantic interest in a potential partner now than you were 40 years ago?
Again, this is why I'm telling you. First of all, I don't care he's a professor. He's going to skip over a whole bunch of reasons. You're a professor, but you can't do any research as to why men are turning themselves away from women. This is how you know they have to say whatever the mainstream media says, or they can get canceled. Men don't want to approach women at work because women get them in trouble. You have to look exactly like that woman wants you to look for them to basically not do it. And as far as work goes, getting completely off topic, why would you want to go to a job that doesn't appreciate you, tells you to come in, you can bust your butt every single day, all day long, all day long, fight, work, do all that wonderful stuff. But when you need something, they want to suck their teeth, they want to complain, oh, well, be a team player, do all this other stuff. I don't blame people from when COVID happened, when they started working from home. I don't blame them. Why do you want to come home? Why do you want to go get dressed up to work for a group of people who don't care about you? And you have the people who come from who worked 40 years ago. We're back in my day. We worked all day, our butts off. This ain't your day. It's a completely different generation. It's a completely different job orientation. It's completely different. The way you were treated back then is nowhere the way that they treat people now. These people realize that they're paying out of their butts through a recession, $5 for a gallon of milk just to take care of their family. And you want me to waste gas, go all the way down there to be yelled at, screamed at, and told that if you keep screwing up, you'll be fired. Gee, I don't know why Gen Z doesn't want to work. And as far as dating goes, women ruined that. But you're a professor, wouldn't know that. You wouldn't bring that up because they'd cancel you in a minute. Basically telling the truth. Women messed it up themselves. That's not men's fault. That's women's fault.
The answer is clearly no. And by the way, men and women have been told in many places that if you have feelings for someone at work, you have to go to HR first. That'll kill the moment. And I get why that's the policy. I get how we got here. Having said that, the unforeseen consequences of the Me Too movement, or of Me Too in general, and the problems that began the movement, that's a show we need to do at some point. And we have to have a really honest conversation about that. But that's not this show. I'm just saying, having to go to HR is...
So I want you to understand something. I'm going to stop cutting it and let it play. When people say that, they'll never bring it up again. They'll never bring it up again. That's not this show, because it never comes up. They'll say it. They'll talk about the elephant in the room, but they will never, ever bring it up ever again. Guarantee you, whenever this show came out, they're not going to bring it up ever. You can check it. They won't bring it up because that goes against the narrative.
Kind of a hard start. Jen, why don't you start? What are the biggest concerns you have here?
Yeah, look, Mika, first of all, I met my husband at work at the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. He asked me out over email and brought me ice cream. It was a much more traditional way of meeting someone. Look, I think the biggest concern I have here is the mental health impact on young people. And we've seen that in statistics and a ton of reporting about the disconnect. And you just went over a fair amount of it for men, certainly, and also for women. And I just think anecdotally of talking to a lot of women I work with, who I have the pleasure of working with on my team, they, you know, men and women have been wanting to just have sex for decades, right? That's not new. I think they're still probably they're hooking up still, right? But it's more about that deeper connection. And as Scott said, relationships are work. Emotional connections are work, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever it may be, or a mentor relationship. And there's such a cotton candy aspect of the world we're living in right now. That's also a fantasy world, right? You mentioned porn. That's, of course, on the sex side. But it's also just how people portray themselves on social media. It's not connected to the difficulty and the struggle that often you have to go through in order to have the most rewarding relationship, the most rewarding friendships, the most rewarding mentorships. And the mental health impact is the biggest concern, because connection is what makes life joyful. And that to me is what I worry about the most.
Yes, Simone, Americans are more lonely and isolated than ever. There's data on this. And what do you make of Professor Galloway's remarks on Morning Joe that we're producing too many of the most dangerous people in the world, namely young, broken, lonely men?
You know, Mika, I thought that a lot of Professor Galloway's comments were interesting. I listened to the whole segment twice yesterday because, one, I think that people are going out. And also, I don't think that I didn't meet my husband at work. I actually met my husband going out. I was at an event. After the event, some folks introduced, at the time, he was what was known in Washington, D.C. as the Nightmare. And some folks that I know asked me, oh, do you know the Nightmare? I said, I've heard of him. I do not know him. I've never had the pleasure. And that was I like to say we've been dating ever since. I think he might take issue with my timeline. So I would argue that people are going out in different social settings. But I also think the apps, for example, are not terrible. One of my best girlfriends met her husband on the apps. You know, I know a lot of people who are meeting folks on the apps, and it is opening up, frankly, the world of the dating pool bigger than just who comes to your neighborhood bar or who you might see in the office. And so I think that is a good thing. Look, I think about these lonely, broke, dangerous men. I don't really know, Mika. I'm not sold on the lonely, broke, and dangerous men. I think that we are producing a generation of younger people who do not have hustle and drive, and the lack of hustle and drive one is where I do agree with Professor Galloway, in that, you know, there's a younger generation of people who would rather be home than go out and socialize. But I think the idea that folks are not going out, that folks are not socializing, is not true. More so, I think it's that the pool of men that women would like to date is smaller. There's more women than men. It has always been that way. When I moved to Washington, D.C., that's what everyone said. It's like, for every one guy, there's 10 women that want to date him. So there's...
Yeah, you want to know why? And before I let this go, because I'm going to leave the link in the description box so you can watch the rest of the stupid nonsense. Like I said, it's always men's fault. We're basically establishing that the problem is that women change the dating market. She basically said it. They're all chasing the same guys. Now, the funny thing is about the men that they chase, they will reproduce with those same men, whether they're the top 10% or the bottom 10%. Top 10% are the pookies. People can dispute that, but if they were really who they really wanted, they would go with them long term, but they know they're not long term men. They shoot for those type of men. And the rest of the men, the 80% of men, are just non-existent. But for some reason, those men become desirable once they become bottom of the barrel women, or leftover women, as China would say. So my question is, how do you look at 80% of men as non-desirable, but they become desirable when you become useless to a man? It's funny, because women can get away with this and no one bats an eye. No one says anything. And it's ridiculous that no matter how many times we know what the problem is, we blame men, because blaming men is easy. Blaming men is probably the easiest thing you can do as a woman, because they take all the brunt of your problems, put on their shoulders. That's why this shows like this can say it, because they know that women will gravitate towards it, rather blame the men than blame their own choices.